We are almost all set.
Mayor, it's Mario Capola. I'm on as well. Sorry.
Yes, I saw you. Okay.
Thank
Okay, it says that we're now streaming live.
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, well, I'd like to call to order the August 25th meeting of the Common Council. If you will all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
The flag of the United States of America
and to the
to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice
justice
for all. Thank you. Clerk, if you'll please call the roll and read the announcement.
We can't hear you, Donna. I'm sorry.
You're muted.
It says, something.
Okay,
There we go. The meeting is being recorded for rebroadcast. We ask everyone to speak clearly, one at a time. Please state your name when called upon by the presiding chair. Members of the public can access the meeting by telephone, Zoom, or by the City of Norwalk YouTube channel. Mr. Burnett,
Present.
Ms. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Langella,
Present.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Present.
Ms. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Huberman,
Present.
Mr. Roberts,
Present.
Mr. Dumas, Ms. Young,
Here.
Mr. Kites,
Here.
Mr. Theodorides,
Here.
Mr. Keegan?
Here.
Mr. Sirenides?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Ms. Shanahan?
Here.
14 present. You have a quorum.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of August 11th, 2020. Do I have a motion? Mr. Livingston moves. Any corrections, deletions, omissions? No corrections. Okay, seeing none. All in favor of the minutes as submitted? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. There are no resignations. I'm sorry, public participation. Do we have anybody logged on to speak, Ms. Church?
We do, Mayor. We have Diane Laricella. Diane, you should be allowed to unmute yourself now to speak.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm here tonight just to speak in favor of an item on the agenda in the Planning Committee, the Solar for All program. I love their focus on low and middle income families. And I do think they will do, with the setup that they have with Posigen and the Green Bank, that they'll do a much more thorough job than our previous solar efforts, although they were okay. I think this will add to the numbers, but also they will also give each of their clients a home energy assessment for efficiency, which is actually the very important step. And it's also a learning experience. I know several of the towns that have worked with the Solar for All program in Connecticut, and they've had a very good experience. I know in Hamden, the energy and sustainability coordinator, she told me it was a great experience with Posigen. I think that they're giving to our citizens a priceless experience, as well as saving money in their lease of their roof. I want to make sure that in the near future, and I'm happy to work with Darlene Young and others, that the second and third taxing district, which are part of the Connecticut Municipal Electric Energy Cooperative, or CMEC. Unfortunately, CMEC-related towns or areas, in other words, people that pay or get their electricity from second and third taxing district, in this case, in our city, they are not eligible for this particular program. However, there are other opportunities with the individual solar companies themselves. They can work with CMEC towns. It's just that this program, Solar for All, cannot. So since it's something that, as many of you know, is near and dear to my heart, both as an advocate for clean, renewable energy and saving money, as well as a professional in recommending things like this to people, I lastly offer my assistance to help spread the word, because my understanding is that the public is going to be engaged, and I'd love to help the city make this a successful run, especially with the addition of the equity toolkit. In the case of such a diverse town, it's a wonderful addition, and it's something that I, again, have as an advocate, and professionally, I've worked in the equity, with the equity community. So thank you for, I'm glad the staff flagged this. I think it's a great program, and I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Ms. Church, is there anybody else?
Nope, that's all.
Ms. King, do you have any emails of people wishing to address the council?
No, Mayor.
Okay, so back to the agenda. There are no resignations and appointments. Under remarks, for me, just a few tonight. We are planning in our reopening plan. We are at this point in time planning to reopen to appointment only City Hall on September 8th, the day after Labor Day. We will be planning on having people call in to make an appointment for whatever department it is they wish to visit. They will come into City Hall. They will have a device there which will be able to monitor the individual's temperature. Anybody over 100 degrees would be asked to reschedule. We are also planning on having a scheduling software so that the guard will know exactly who has appointments and who doesn't. The person coming in will present an ID. Hopefully we will have the technology at that point to make the person a badge, and then call the department where this individual is going to visit and have them come down and escort them. The reason being that we still are seeing things happening around the country, and certainly right here in the state of Connecticut, with Danbury just having a significant spike in some of their COVID-19 cases. So we are not out of the woods yet, and we want to make sure that we have been what I consider to be, and I think others do too, we've been very cautious, and we've been very relatively successful in making sure that we do everything we can to minimize the outbreak in our community. And we want to make sure that we don't take our foot off the gas pedal now. We want to continue being cautious. We want to continue protecting our citizens. We also have announced that the schools will now be opening on September 8th for people who may have missed that. We had a discussion, I had a discussion with Dr. Estrella, and when she found out that we were opening City Hall on September 8th, she thought it was wise to push the school year back a couple of days so that teachers can have more professional development and they can prepare to do things in the schools to make sure that the students and the staff are going to be protected as well. The state of Connecticut has provided $8.2 million to the Norwalk Public Schools to help with their reopening plan. And we're number 2 in the state behind Hartford. So we believe we got a nice little stipend from the state, which will certainly help us in our reopening plan. Also, last night, as you know, and I know everybody in the council knows and most people know, but there was an outage by Eversource Services. They had a substation in New Canaan Avenue that caught fire. And in order to allow the firefighters to go in and extinguish the fire, they had to close down some of the other grids. That's why we lost approximately 16,000 customers lost their power last night. They did restore gradually and bringing people back up online. We've been in contact with them over the past couple of weeks for several reasons. Certainly one of them is the inadequate response to Isaias. And also last night's issue was very frustrating to people who spent 7 days or 8 days without power right after the storm. And it became a here we go again. Tonight, there's also an outage after several lightning strikes throughout the city. The last I knew, there were 2 major pockets of about 1,000 customers each and a couple of minor pockets with 200 or 300 customers. We've been assured and we expect them to deliver. We've been assured that they're going to have adequate staffing in to make sure that they get power restored as quickly as possible. So I know there are a couple of things on the agenda that we'll be addressing later on. The one that we'll be discussing in executive session. We're also going to be voting tonight on a chief information security officer who will be hopefully to protect the city from the increased numbers of people that are hacking into systems and trying to forward scams to take advantage of the pandemic and other kinds of situations. I just read in the paper today that a woman was told that the IRS or the Social Security Administration, she owed them $1,200, and that if she didn't pay them, the police would be coming to her house. She got a follow-up call from somebody who identified themselves as a police officer, and she ended up losing $1,200. A senior citizen who I'm sure that was quite a difficult thing for her. So we want to make sure that we protect ourselves, protect our citizens, protect our city from the same kinds of things. And Mr. Dakowitz is joining us tonight, as well as Karen Del Vecchio, and I'm sure they might want to make a comment about that. So with that, I will now turn it over to the council president, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I am thankful that we are all able to be here tonight with so many power outages again tonight. After last night, it's pretty unnerving, and I think everyone's nerves are pretty frazzled after all of the outages with Isaias. And so I'm thankful that we're all here. I'm also thankful that those who do not have power who would like to be joining us are able to do that at their own convenience once they get power back with the wonders of Zoom and YouTube. I have no further comments at this time, and so I'll turn the consent calendar over to Mr. Hoovelman.
Thank you, President Smith. Consent calendar for August 25th. 7, Common Council Committees. 7A, Finance and Claims Committee. 7A1, accept and approve the report of the Claims Committee dated August 13th, 2020. 7A2, for information purposes only, narrative on tax collections dated August 13th, 2020. 7A3, for informational purposes only, monthly tax collectors report dated July 2020. 7B, Ordinance Committee. 7B1, approve the following revisions, amendments to City Code Sections 32-8 of the City Code, Chapter 32-8, Prohibitive Gifts. And back to you, President Smith.
Short and sweet. Thank you, Mr. Hoovelman. I will now call for a vote on the consent calendar by roll call. Mr. Burnett?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Langella?
Aye.
Mr. Sacchinelli?
Aye.
Mr. Hoovelman?
Aye.
Mr. Roberts?
Aye.
Ms. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Kites?
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides?
Yes.
Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Sirenides?
Yes.
Mr. Livingston?
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
All right, the consent calendar passes unanimously. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And thank you, Mr. Hooverman. That was quite a well-done job. You could have done it while you were still holding your breath. It was so short. But
Short and sweet. Just
all
like
right,
me.
Mr. Kites, item 7C1. Are you muted?
Now I am not. Thank you. Sorry about
Now
that.
you're not.
Authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an agreement with PosiGen and the Connecticut Green Bank for the Solar for All campaign, and authorize the use of the Norwalk City logo on campaign related promotional materials. I'd like to move that item and just quickly speak to it, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kites, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. The city of Norwalk wanted to continue the momentum with promoting solar energy assessments and other energy efficiency programs. And we've done this time around with in collaboration with the Connecticut Green Bank. And I wanted to take this time and to take this item off consent to speak to it and try to get the word out to the Norwalk, like Ms. Laura Cello mentioned before, to Eversource customers here in Norwalk. And if they have like any additional information, that will soon be up on the city's website with all the specifics. And even if you're not looking for solar, they offer many other programs such as home energy assessments and other energy efficiency rebates and so forth. So I think it's a great thing. I'm happy to be a part of it. And that company that the city has chosen is PosiGen, a company that's been vetted by the city and also by Connecticut Green Bank. So we really went into the weeds on their abilities, their track record, their costs, there's, you know, the whole bag. So hopefully this will pass tonight and we can get going on this 5-month program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Kites. Further discussion, Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just first want to thank the staff for bringing this forward, to thank Mr. Kites and the Planning Committee. What I like about the program is it's designed to bring solar and energy efficiency to homeowners who are left out of traditional programs. And low-income families, many people know this, spend a disproportionate share of their income on utility bills. But the typical typical investment required for solar remains a significant barrier. But this program provides special incentives for households who are below 100% of the AMI. And they provide solar panels, provide solar panels to those who couldn't otherwise be able to get them, and also reduce their carbon footprint. So I see it as a win-win for the city and the residents and strongly endorse it.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Further comment? Thank you. And I too agree. I think this is a wonderful program. I want to thank Mr. Kites and the Planning Committee for working on this. You know, for the past 6+ years, we've been truly focused on reducing our carbon footprint, on our energy efficiency, and trying to defray costs and other kinds of things that are good for the community, are good for the city, and are good for the environment. And this is just another step in that direction. So I'm really encouraged and I truly appreciate it. So without further discussion, if there is none, Ms. King, will you call the roll?
Mr. Burnett,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Langella,
Aye.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Hubelman,
Aye.
Mr. Roberts, Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Kites,
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Sirenides,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan,
Yes.
14 yeas. You have it's unanimous.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Kites, item 7C2.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Authorize Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute a 3-party agreement with the Norwalk Parking Authority and Dorenberg Kallenbach Advertising to provide citywide marketing communication services in the sum not to exceed $100,000 for fiscal year 2021. I'd like to also move that item and also speak to this briefly, please.
Mr. Kites.
This initiative started, I believe, 2-3 years ago with the origination of the concept of having an advertising firm help with market businesses in mostly in the South Norwalk area. But with this, I believe that span will widen to the entire to businesses throughout the city of Norwalk. And to my understanding, this campaign is for 1 year, and this collaboration is between the Parking Authority and the city's Economic Development Department. I know from previous experiences that there's been, the program was very promising. Businesses were, as being an active business owner out there in Norwalk, I felt like they did a great job with marketing and getting the word about local businesses, and not just in the regional. I mean, just not here in Norwalk, but regionally, they got the word out. So I'm very optimistic about this new company that we brought on board, Dornberg Kallenbach. I think they stole the show during the RFP process, and I'm very hopeful that they can do equal or if not better job than their predecessor. So I guess I'd like to move that item and hope to have the support from the council on it.
Thank you, Mr. Kites. Further discussion? Mr. Sirenides.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add a little bit to what Mr. Kites said. He's absolutely correct. Going forward, this program is going to expand to the entire city, and where it originated with just a central location, primarily in South Norwalk, and mainly the restaurant businesses. This is going to go a lot further. It's going to be a lot more broad. It's going to involve a lot of different variety businesses, not just focusing on the restaurants. I think it's going to be a great move for Norwalk. And I also want to add that with Dornberg and Kallenbach, they bring experience working with the state CT, Connecticut Parking Authority, and multiple other municipal clients, which opens up an opportunity for partnership and cross advertising. So we should see a big benefit going with them.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, I too think this is a great program. You know, that these are challenging times and a lot of our businesses are struggling. A lot of them are trying to keep their head above water. And we need to help them market their product, help bring people an awareness of what Norwalk has to offer. We have a really, really great community here. Our proximity to New York City, the amenities that we have, the things that we have here in the city, the restaurants and the shops. You know, it's a place where people want to come, they want to visit, and we need to provide information and help some of our local businesses thrive, especially since a lot of them have suffered during the pandemic by being closed. So I think this is a great program, and again, kudos to the team planning committee that worked on getting this in, and kudos to the interview team that selected the new vendor. So having said that, if there are no further discussions, Ms. King.
Mr. Burnett,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Langella,
Aye.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Huelverman,
Aye.
Mr. Roberts,
Aye.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Kites,
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Sirenides,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan,
Yes.
14 yeses. It passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Now, item 7D1, Ms. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Approval of and vote on position description of Chief Information Security Officer. I would like to move that and speak to it, please, if I may.
Ms. Smith has moved it. Ms. Smith, you have the floor.
Yes, ransomware attacks have been increasing for quite some time and met a record high last year, costing victims millions and millions of dollars. Municipal governments and educational institutions are particularly vulnerable to ransomware attacks. And one of the things that's really scary is that we store huge amounts of identifiable information that are at risk. Things like records regarding students and their families, criminal investigations, birth, marriage, death records, social security numbers, payroll data, really, really private information. And they are all at risk for ransomware attacks. So I feel really strongly, and I hope that you will too, that we really, really need the position of Chief Information Security Officer. Something about this position that I'm particularly pleased about is that this officer will cover both the city and the Board of Education. That's one person to oversee both sides of our operations. And so that's great. It's the first time I think we've seen that. I feel that this Chief Information Security Officer is a critical position. In this day and age, we can't afford to be without this position. We have Karen Del Vecchio and Henry Dakowitz here to contribute some additional information and answer any questions that you might have. Maybe Karen, do you want to start?
Certainly. Thank you, Councilman Smith. And just the key takeaways, I think, from what you spoke about is, the city is the caretaker of critical private information related to citizens, students, and their families, employees, retirees, and municipal operations. Personally identifiable information is also regulated information. There are federal guidelines as to how this information should be stored and transferred, and we're caretakers of that information. We need a central point of responsibility, someone who is at a peer level with the senior leadership team, whose primary focus and is dedicated to the creating this security and information privacy plan and making sure that those guidelines are being adhered to across all departments, as well as to work with departments in order to help them be in compliance. As you mentioned, we are under a greater level of attack. We've seen this with COVID-19, that municipalities and particularly healthcare organizations are key targets right now. So this really is a position that's really at the forefront to be able to help us in crafting these plans, these protocols, and these procedures, and then taking that training to our employees. We really need a central location to bring together a plan in place for both the entire city and the Board of Education. Henry, is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure. Henry Dakowitz, CFO. Karen, as the IT expert, summed it up. But Barbara, you mentioned an important point about authority and reporting relationships. When I first came in here, we retained an outside IT consulting firm, Bloom Shapiro, to review our cybersecurity, and they reviewed both sides, the city and the Board of Education, because the bad guys, the hackers, don't care where they get in, they'll go everywhere. And it was a joint process. It was paid for by both sides. The reports went to both sides. And I'm pleased to say that the evaluations were very positive, that both sides are doing a very good job. There are areas for improvement, and we've had implementation programs to improve. But one of the key findings is we need a Chief Information Security Officer. I've gone with Karen in my 15 months here at the city to about a half dozen cybersecurity conferences. And a CISO is just critical. Obviously, private industry with their resources were at the forefront. But I think it's imperative, as Karen has explained to me, this information is not necessarily electronic. It could also be paper. So if you have a department where over the phone, they have a citizen who's charging something to pay us. It could be taxes, it could be a fee, and they write down the credit card number. If we don't shred that and watch where it's disposed, we could have exposure. So we have children's information, health information from the health department. We have financial information, important records. So all of that information, both electronic and paper, must be secured. I just presented 2 weeks ago to the credit rating agencies. They were fascinated by our cybersecurity approach. And we said we had 3 areas. One was technology-based approach. That's where Karen and Ralph Elenzisi work with our outside consultants to make sure the endpoints, the network, the training of people so that they don't succumb to phishing attacks. That's the technology side. We have outside consulting firms who help us monitor. The second is financial, that you good folks and the Board of Estimate have given definitive budgets for cybersecurity, both operating and capital, for the last 5 years. We also have an insurance program in place. And last, it's about human resources, training our people repetitively to be on the lookout, whether it's emails or other information. And we put all of that together, but it's never ending. It's not like a project where you finish and then you can forget about it. It keeps ongoing and keeps us on our toes. So I envision the CISO as being a cabinet level position that reports to the mayor and the council. When I was a CFO in private industry, I reported to the CEO, but I also had a dotted line to the audit committee of the board of directors, so that if I needed to, I could go directly to the board and say, I have a concern and I need support. And we look at the CISO as being that significant to the entire operation. And therefore, they are looking at electronic and paper information. They're looking not just at cybersecurity, but just privacy. How do we make sure that all this information that is in our possession is protected and guarded from being revealed improperly? We think it's a critical role. We are hoping, we are stretching with as much resources to pay this individual, but as you can imagine, CISOs are in very high demand everywhere. And maybe, knock on wood, but maybe with COVID and people being unemployed, we might get lucky and get a better individual than we might have gotten at other times. But we're looking to get someone to build this specialty and upgrade all of what we do to keep our security.
Thank you, Mr. Dakowitz. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Livingston?
It's not really a question. I actually just want to compliment you for moving this forward. It's something that I and others have discussed over the last several years. And I think it's a critical need for the city. And I think your comment, Henry, is telling that it's going to, it's a lot of demand for this because other cities recognize the importance of this position and the various vulnerabilities, cities particularly have. So I think it's terrific. I heartily endorse it and really glad to see it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Can I just add a comment? But you should just be aware that we in Norwalk are viewed as doing a pretty good job. Karen Del Vecchio was invited to be a panelist. I believe it was CCM, I'm not sure, on cybersecurity. So we work hard. I give Karen and Ralph kudos for their recognition of what we're doing. And yes, we have to keep advancing. So thank you.
Mr. Keegan, I believe you had a question.
Not a question, Mayor. Thank you. Just a comment. I've spoken to a number of people about this position, and I am fully supportive of it. It's a needed position for the city. And at the cabinet level, this person must be able to move within the organization laterally and not vertically. So I am 100% supportive of it.
Thank you. Mr. Burnett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very supportive of this position, and in particular, one of the roles of the position, which is business recovery and disaster recovery. I think we've experienced impacts to our community due to natural occurrences, and to ensure that we have a business recovery and disaster recovery plan in place, I think is critical to our operations. So I'm very supportive of this individual coming in and ensuring that we have a sound and capable and tested plan should we experience any type of natural or business impact that could slow down our operations.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Mr. Hooverman.
Yes, I just a comment that, I think COVID has exposed the dependence that we have now on technology and the need to secure that technology. And I'm glad we're moving forward with this. I'm heartened that we've been in the forefront, that we are as secure as we are, but I'm glad that we're taking the steps to continue us into a 21st century ideology where tech is concerned, because this is incredibly important as we move forward. So I appreciate what you guys have done, and I fully support this this initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Hooverman. Further discussion, comments? I also I want to congratulate the team. One of the things I failed to mention at the beginning of the meeting, Henry and Karen and the IT team and the finance team, and actually the entire team worked really, really hard. And we just issued our capital budget bonds, and we got an interest rate, I think, of 1.67, Henry?
Yes, sir.
1.67, which is astronomical. And the reason we got that is because people want to invest in our community, because once again, all three bond rating agencies found us to be fiscally responsible, fiscally sound, and we are AAA bond rated through all three agencies. And that's a testament to the hard work of the team, of the council, of the administration, the people that work for us, who really, really know what they're doing and do it well. So I wanted to just remind everybody about that and thank Henry and his team for that as well. So if there are no further questions, no further discussion, Ms. King?
Mr. Burnett,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Langella,
Aye.
Mr. Sacchinelli,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Huvelman,
Aye.
Mr. Roberts,
Aye.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Kites,
Yes.
Mr. Theodorides,
Yes.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Serenides,
Yes.
Mr. Livingston,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan.
Yes.
14 votes, you have a unanimous vote.
Unanimous, thank you. And Ms. Smith, for item 72, I will also need a motion for executive session.
Yes, Mayor, I make a motion that we move into executive session for the approval of and vote on retirement incentive program.
There's been a motion for executive session. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion, Ms. Young?
Yes. I have to recuse myself, Mayor.
Okay, yes, I understand that totally.
Thank
So
you.
we are now 13 in favor, 1 abstention, Ms. Young, and we are now going into executive session. Ms. Young will be recusing herself. And inviting into executive session will be, I believe, Ms. Smith, Mr. Burney, Ms. King, and Mr. Capola. Is that correct?
And Mr. Dakowitz, I believe.
Oh, okay, and Mr. Dakowitz, okay. So thank you, and Ms. Church, if you could arrange for us to go into executive session.
Yep, I'm gonna pause this and then you guys can leave this meeting and go to the link that I provided you.
Okay.
Sabrina, I'm not sure.
Sabrina, I didn't get the link. Sabrina, I didn't get the link for the executive session. Could you please send it to me? It's Mario Capola.
I don't have it either.
That's me too.
You don't need me, do you?
Donna, you don't have to go.
You don't need to stay. No.
Thank you.
Meant me, Donna.
Okay, good. Thanks, Lisa.
I just forwarded it, so you should have gotten it.
Ms. Church, could you forward it to me as well? I don't recall seeing it either.
Sure.
So we leave here and go to the other session, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sabrina, do you need someone to stay on this call so that we don't lose this session?
I'm gonna stay on this call and then I'm gonna transfer the host once I'm in the other meeting.
Okay, so you don't need me to stay here. I can depart.
Let me just make sure that I can start the other meeting before I tell you to go.
Okay, so I'll wait here if you want to transfer host to me and then I can transfer back to you, I think.
Sure.
Sabrina, it's Dominique. I don't believe I have that link either.
All right, I'll send it over.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
Is there an email that works for you?
Yes, djohnson@norwalkct.org is great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Just got it. Thanks a lot.
Perfect.
Have a good night.
Karen, it's telling me that I have to end the meeting that I'm in, even though I'm on the different Zoom account.